Next, another in our reports on fixing the public schools in New Orleans and Washington, D.C. Tonight, as the school year ends in New Orleans, John Merrow reports on teaching the youngest students to read.
Congratulations for your elite test scores. That's awesome. Let's give yourselves a big round of applause.
In May, New Orleans' troubled Recovery School District was celebrating.
You guys having fun? All right, well, we're about to have a ton of fun. Can you guys handle it? Yeah!
After a long first year, Superintendent Paul Vallas had something to boast about.
We went up in every grade, in every subject, and we outperformed everyone else in growth. Congratulations!
The results of the state-mandated assessment tests put Vallas's district in the national spotlight.
If you look at the test scores across the board, both 4th grade, 8th grade, and high school, there was improvement across the board.
But even in the midst of celebration, Vallas reminded his audience there was much to be done.
The sobering note is test scores are very, very low, still, despite the growth, and that we have an incredibly long way to go.
Raising those scores is the goal of Vallas's reforms. With a majority of students performing well below grade level, Vallas spends most of his time playing catch-up.
Only 40% of the kids at the high school level are still passing the graduate exit exam on the first run.
Problems for older students can be traced back to early elementary grades, something Vallas is well aware of.
I'm a big believer that early intervention and early literacy, early numeracy can translate into dramatic improvement.
What book are we reading and reading this week?
That made us curious. What's happening in first grade? After all, the early grades form the foundation for learning. Are first graders in New Orleans learning to read? Because if they aren't, then Vallas and whoever succeeds him are destined to play catch-up forever. We decided to check out some first-grade classrooms for ourselves. Benjamin Banneker Elementary School is one of a handful of schools not damaged by Hurricane Katrina and the flooding.
Can you use that word nothing in a sentence?
We went into Elizabeth Holloway's first-grade class. Holloway has been teaching for 8 years, but this is her first experience teaching first graders how to read.
Reading was something that always frightened me a little bit because it is such a responsibility.
What's the long sound?
But I've been finding my way along.
What's the short sound for I? What's that short sound? Do it again. It. One more time. It. The long sound for I. I. Stop.
I don't know that everyone could teach reading. To be a teacher, you need to be able to assess where the children are and know where you're headed. And also to look at yourself and say, okay, what can I do to help them move along?
Ms. Holloway let me lead the class for a few minutes.
Girls, boys and girls, if I write something, will you read it for me? Yeah. All right, close your eyes. Close your eyes. Okay. Okay, read me the story.
The pink fish likes pancakes.
That's right. Did she get it right? Did she get it right? Okay. What do you think of that story? Yes. What's wrong?
Fish don't eat pancakes.
Fish don't eat pancakes. Oh, that's good.
Then I asked a few first graders to read from Nate the Great, a book they'd never seen before.
I had just eaten breakfast. Now I, Nate the Great, will find a lost picture. I went to Annie's house. Annie has brown hair and brown eyes.
Okay, tell me about Annie.
Annie is a girl.
Right. What color hair does she have?
Brown.
What color eyes?
Brown.
Okay, cool. Let's go. Let's see. Oh, that must be.
These first graders clearly understood what they were reading, a crucial indicator of reading proficiency.
The national goal is to have everybody reading by third grade. Does that surprise you that first graders can learn to read?
Oh, no. Oh, no. We think and we know that children can learn to read at very early ages.
Sherilyn Branch is Banneker's veteran principal.
But the teachers have an understanding that reading is so important. The earlier the kids are exposed and the earlier they start, the more success they are not guaranteed to have, but more likely to have.
Most of Branch's teachers are veterans. She gives them credit for the school's success.
I prefer people who know what they're doing. I prefer people who have a proven track record. I prefer people who are going to stay here and work with our children for the long haul.
It seems to be working. On the recent state tests, 55% of fourth graders and 46% of eighth graders passed. That makes Banneker one of the district's most improved schools.
All of our teachers and students have done a great job, and it's been proven by the test scores. It's a wonderful place to be, and the people who work here enjoy working here.
Our next stop, Fannie C. Williams, looks nothing like Banneker. It's just a group of trailers sitting way out in East New Orleans. Most schools in this area were damaged beyond repair by Katrina. Fannie C. opened just this year. And their test scores were much lower. Only 29% of fourth graders passed the state test. But inside Carrie White's first grade classroom, the students were just as engaged as those at Banneker.
So let's get started. We're going to read by groups.
White has been teaching for 3 years.
Somebody help me out because I forgot this weekend what sound long A makes. A. Very good. Excellent, excellent job.
Again, I took over the class for a few minutes.
Okay, who wants to read this one?
Jake is really brave.
Okay, so now let's just have one person read it. Yes.
Jake is really brave.
Okay, now what does it mean?
Brave means
Yeah.
courageous.
Courageous, that's a good word. Wow, courageous.
Would Ms. White's students be able to read and understand Nate the Great?
Okay, let's go to the first page. Okay, want to read for me?
My name is Nate the Great. I work alone. Let me tell you about my last case.
I do have a group of good lower elementary teachers who instill in the kids that importance for knowledge and being able to read.
Kelly Batiste is the principal of Fannie C. Williams. Of her 30 classroom teachers, over 1/3 are either new or uncertified.
I have a good balance of new versus experienced or veteran teachers.
Batiste and her teachers are trying to encourage these elementary school students to aspire beyond high school.
The road to college begins at Fannie C. Williams, and so you'll see the college banners across the campus.
Instead of us calling them first graders or second graders, we're calling them the class of 2019, the class of 2020, because that's the expectation of when they're going to go to college or a trade school.
At both schools we visited, we were impressed by the first graders' reading proficiency. We wondered if Paul Vallas would be surprised.
Mr. Vallas, what do you think would happen if I went into your first grade classes and asked them to read that book?
Well, right now, I think most of the kids would struggle, but hopefully in the next year or two, they'll struggle less.
Should I tell you that I spent the last 2 days with your first graders, and they read that with comprehension?
Yeah, but which school?
Banneker Elementary School.
Yeah, I believe that. And Johnson.
Fannie Williams?
Yeah, but the majority of our kids would struggle with that. I'm telling you, 85% of the kids are a year and a half to 2 years below grade level. So the majority of the kids would struggle with that type of textbook.